I wanted to get Dr. Group on about this article, but people also liked when he was on 2 weeks ago, and we had the Ask Dr. Group a question on supplements, on cleaning up your body, on detoxing, something that he harps on a lot. It's out of the Daily Mail today. Exposure to common household pesticides triples boys' risk of ADHD. Really, you mean bug poison might not be good for you? Experts warn. A pesticide found in common household products has been found to triple boys' risk of being diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Yeah, roaches run around at first when you spray them with poison too. Scientists have warned. Symptoms of the condition, notably hyperactivity and impulsive activity, have found to be associated with exposure to pyrethroid pesticides, which is one of the most common ones that comes from a flower in South Africa that they claim is pretty safe. Chrysanthemum, yeah. Look, I'm not stupid, but my dad would tell me when I was 10, 11, 12 years old or even younger, take the dogs out and give them a bath. They got fleas. And I remember I'd wash them with pyrethrin soap. And I remember getting higher than a kite. But my dad was a smart guy, but he kind of went with the system that pyrethrins are safe for humans. No, I should have been wearing gloves. And I'd get it all over me, and I'd be back there, on the porch or the front yard, out there with the water hose, washing the dogs, scrubbing them, everything. That was one of my chores, mowing the lawn, carrying out the trash, helping him clean out the gutters. Now kids just watch television and dream of being in the Red Guards, but I can't wait for Red Terror to be carried out on Jones. Yeah, man. Can't wait to kill him. That might be easier than you think, actually. Then you're going to get locked up in a Supermax prison. But continuing here, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we're talking about. And you add thousands of chemicals and the stuff that's in the clothes and everything, that's why we got a whacked out society. The elite are whacked out because they're inbred, decadent, out of their minds. History shows that happens over and over again. So Dr. Group, InfoWarsLife.com's main advisor and quality control officer, Army Special Ops veteran. He's got a whole bunch of nutritionist degrees, alternative medicine degrees, a chiropractor as well. I won't go over his amazing background, but he's really a smart guy. We have medical doctors that advise us as well, and my dad's a chemist and other things. He advises InfoWarsLife.com. But he's pioneered a lot of the research that's cutting edge out there today. And of course, it's mirrored by a lot of the research of Dr. Blaylock, who's, of course, a retired brain surgeon. But here we are going over all this today. Dr. Group, what should we hit first? I mean, I know you've got an agenda of stuff you want to cover and take calls at the bottom of the hour, but every time you come in, you harp on what's under the kitchen cabinet or what these flower extracts are doing. What is your overall view on this situation?
Well, I've been saying for a long time, addressing the root cause of disease is one thing. And really, when you look at the pharmaceutical companies, there's two branches. One branch is disease management, and the other branch is mental illness creation and management. And all of them, whether it's ADD, ADHD, depression, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, all of that's caused by too many chemicals coming in and not enough coming out.
And folks knew that. They used to say mad as a hatter for folks that worked around mercury.
Right, right. So again, it's the medical profession and the pharmaceutical companies creating illnesses and creating conditions, and they're saying it's a chemical imbalance in the brain, but it's really chemical toxicity in the brain. That's why 3,000 people a month die from psychiatric medications, and that's why our children are being medicated now, because it's an easy way to put people on medications for the rest of their life. They're even trying to diagnose children in the womb with bipolar disease right now. They want every single person from the age of 1 on some medication for life. There's 4-year-olds that have attempted suicide. There's 5-year-olds that have actually committed suicide because of the antipsychotics.
But that's okay, because the federal initiative that's 10 years old is called the New Freedom Initiative, which admits its goal is to basically drug everybody. Its interim goal is by 2015, I guess that's this year, to have half the kids in the country on a psychiatric drug. They haven't reached that yet, but they're working towards it.
Right. And if you leave a psychiatrist's office without a prescription, there's even a mental disorder for that, where they can put on your record that you left without a prescription and you have mental illness because you left. So yes, they want to it's the labeling of the new society. So in the future, they can take your rights away from you because you're mentally unstable and you have some form of mental disorder, whether it's ADD, ADHD, whether it's a phobia, biting your fingernails, eating organic food. It doesn't matter.
Not trusting big government. I mean, they're creating scores of new mental illnesses every year.
Right. Well, the DSM-5 now has over 400 mental illnesses in it, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And not only that, but the psychiatric medications, most of them contain fluoride, which calcifies the pineal gland, demotivates you. What's happening is turning people into zombies, and we're not creating geniuses again like we used to. Most of the world's best geniuses, Einstein, Sir Isaac Newton, all of those individuals would have been labeled with learning disabilities and put on some sort of medication. So it's the dumbing down with the inclusion of the vaccinations and all the other chemicals and toxins like what you were talking about earlier in the home and in the environment, in the schools, in the workplace, that people and children are being exposed to, and the children are just a lot more sensitive to it than the adults. But
I remember when I would use pyrethrin-based stuff, I would get hyper, I would get sped up from it. I mean, I just remember feeling weird after I would wash the dogs, and then now here it is, just admitted, and they said it was totally safe for humans to be around, but of course we know that's not true. And here's another headline: BPA still widespread in cans. So we've had a victory in that BPA, that Dr. Group's dad was involved in inventing, a famous chemist. We've had victory in getting it removed some places, and they act like they're removing it, but then they just come right back with it. So the fight is still ongoing. I just threw out a whole smattering of articles there in this short segment. Which one of those you want to tackle first, Dr. Group?
Well, you were talking about the transgender, and I mean, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a mental illness or a degenerative disease, it's all caused by the accumulation of chemicals. And the whole transgender situation that's going on is really because we have too many chemicals that are in the water and the food, and they're getting into the system and creating excess estrogen because they're endocrine disrupting chemicals, which disrupt your endocrine glands, and your endocrine glands are what regulates and secretes your hormones. And what that does is it decreases fertility. It causes you to become sterile. And these are all things like BPA, dioxins, BPS, the atrazine, phthalates, perchlorate, fire retardants, even lead, mercury, arsenic, all of these things that we're exposed to.
Well, explain it to me how BPA, from just the research I've looked at, that's mainline science, makes females more female, male more feminine, causes women to degenerate in their breasts and other sexual tissues, makes girls go into puberty earlier. So it's all feminizing. They know it's doing this, and then they argue, oh, it's a mental illness. Well, I'm not a big researcher like you are, but I've done scientific research. My dad has done research. I mean, I know that in the embryo of fish, in the embryo of mammals, in the embryo of amphibians, we're going to come back from break, because that's when I wanted to address this in full, that chemicals do change. And from what I've read, I mean, aren't embryos, when they're really small, more female than male, and they change into male? I mean, I'm saying that as a layman there, and that these chemicals basically do develop more feminine type traits in brain tissue. And then I see the comments on InfoWars, no, that's not true. You're either male or female. So I think there's an argument that some of this could be natural, some of it not. But, I mean, I know that chemicals are making male fish female and male frogs female or hermaphrodites. So the folks that are on InfoWars commenting saying I'm wrong, aren't they wrong? I mean, I'm going to go back into the science and do a whole report on this, proving it to them. But, I mean, isn't that mainline science?
It is mainline science, and there's plenty of research out there to back it up. I mean, BPA is really just a xenoestrogen, and a xenoestrogen is a type of xenohormone or artificial hormone that imitates estrogen. And I mean, everything plastic these days contains BPA, the inside of cans. And just because they said that BPA was taken out of baby bottles, that's pretty much the only thing that BPA was taken out of. It's
still in the liners of the microwavable, so you just cook it into your food.
Yeah, and what happens is the body identifies BPA as the real thing. It thinks the BPA is actually estrogen. So what you're having is hormone replacement therapy, courtesy of the government, on every single person.
So it's like a man that chooses to be a woman taking it to become a tranny.
Yeah, because your body behaves like it's loaded with estrogen, and that affects fertility, breast health. You can grow breasts.
Does it affect sexual persuasion?
Absolutely it does. In the brain, especially for the pregnant mother, and these are all documented studies. And
pulling back, I read the news 7 days a week, and I've just seen countless studies. We've covered them. I do want to do a special report. We show all these studies, but I want you to talk about it some because I've got a report here where former Johns Hopkins chief of psychiatry says being transgender is a mental disorder, biologically impossible. Well, I think it's a perfect storm of things. You've got it in the education system being pushed to balkanize and change society. As societies get older and more decadent, as empires get more decadent, this always happens. People just want to try different things. But the chemicals being added supercharges it. That's what they do. That's the effects it has in amphibians, fish, and other mammals. You give them estrogen, they start behaving like a female. And when I talk about this, they have mainstream media come out and say, Alex is bashing gays, saying juice boxes make little boys gay. And it also, you know, gives them prostate cancer earlier. It also makes little girls go into puberty when they're 5 years old. I mean, this is getting crazy. Where the average age of puberty used to be, 14? Now it's like 10 or 9. Children as young as 3 are going into puberty. Breast cancer skyrocketing. And so, yeah, a lot of folks want to say it is a choice completely so they can judge somebody and hate them. I'm not about that. But I am about exposing the Brave New World aspect that Aldous Huxley wrote about in 1932 with Brave New World. And he gave a speech in 1962 at Berkeley saying this was a real plan to end the sexes and make us drones. Now, whether they're going to get away with it or not remains to be seen, but we're all in a giant globalist experiment, and I am an expert on that, and I made the film Endgame exposing it. So break down the science of this and what you think's happening with folks like Caitlyn Jenner and that whole cocktail, what you think the prime driver of this agenda is.
I think that the prime agenda is to alter our chemical structure in our body, because you have to remember that these chemicals, these xenoestrogens and these endocrine disrupting chemicals are designed to specifically attack our endocrine system, which is our hormonal system. And it's not just BPA. Like I was saying earlier, there's so much glyphosate and so much atrazine in the water supply. It's hard to avoid this stuff. I mean, a matter of fact, you can take people that have been juicing and raw vegans and do blood work on them. Over 90% of the population has detectable levels of endocrine disrupting chemicals in their blood. All these things do is disrupt your hormones. So the end game is population control, sterility. When you feel like a woman, or feel like, if you're a woman that feels like a man, you're creating depression, you're creating anxiety, you're creating more money to put you, diagnose you with mental illness. You're exposed. These endocrine disrupting chemicals can have such a damaging effect at parts per billion, which means you only need tiny, tiny, tiny amounts of them. And it is causing sterility, low sperm count in men, infertility. It's causing breast cancer in women, prostate cancer. So there's a lot of different things, I think, that we're getting into. We are like, these chemicals are creating almost like a transgender society. They're the boys that are being born. There's like 7 girls being born in some countries to every 1 boy, because like you said earlier, if you have a lot of these chemicals, it doesn't allow you to change into a boy, because we're really all made as female, and then we eventually become a boy in the womb. But the restriction of this in some countries that have high levels of endocrine disrupting chemicals, you're seeing 7 women being born to every 1 boy. Not only that, you have the accumulation of all these chemicals and toxins that are coming in to the body that are mixing with these endocrine disrupting chemicals, like the GMO foods, the gluten, which now has chemical structure of opiates inside of it, which is addictive and breads.
And that's why if you look at pictures of people, black, white, I don't care, from 100 years ago, 50 years ago, they look like people. They looked good. Everybody kind of looks like mutants now, some more than others. Women don't look like women at the beach. And when you see a classical-looking woman, it's like, wow, she looks like a woman. And then, so no one notices, they roll out and go, men want to be girls now, and add the social structure to make it acceptable to mainline it, moving us towards a completely asexual system where we're all sterile. Now, 90+% sperm drop across the Western world. Brazil and others, just decades after adopting our lifestyle, they're now seeing it. It is a plan. It is a globalist plan stated by them.
Absolutely. I mean, the FDA, first of all, in 2008 said that BPA was fine and nothing's wrong with it. And then when Canada yanked BPA, the baby bottles off, and then Walmart decided to yank all the baby bottles in the U.S., in 2010, the FDA then finally admitted that the National Toxicology Program studies were correct and that BPA was damaging to the brain, behavior, prostate gland, fetuses, children, but they didn't do anything about it. It's just all these government organizations that are designed to do something and protect us, like the EPA, the Atomic Energy Commission, the USDA, the TSA. I mean, all these generic organizations that are out there are not doing anything to protect us, but they're just attacking the natural people and the people that are trying to rally and through activism shut these companies down that are damaging not only the people, but also damaging the planet. Like you said, we're not the only ones affected by this. All the animals are starting to become affected. The bees, that's the whole ecosystem that we live in.
You can search that in the Mississippi River and out in the Gulf, upwards of half the fish in some of the trawls they do have both sexual organs or are sterile or have sexual organs growing on the sides of their bodies. I mean, they are so mutated because when they're embryos, we know fish and amphibian embryos are even more easily affected because they're in the water itself, not inside their mother. The mother acts as some form of a filter that with the fish and embryos, they're getting a full dose, and it is just devastating them. But see, we're now being tranny fishophobic because we're trying to be mean to the sexual preference of the fish. No, the fish is mutated. The fish is dying. But now that people have been changed, they want to hold on to this chemical identity, and they want to go all the way with more chemicals to become the woman, to become the man. And it's just a really sick scientific program that Huxley wrote a fiction book about, but later admitted. How crazy is it that his brother ran the UN UNESCO program, was the top eugenicist in the world and the founder of transhumanism, set our current course. His brother wrote a book about it and then admitted in his other book, Brave New World Revisited, that it was an actual plan. So we have this mountain of a literary famous person telling us this isn't fiction. And we're here living now deeply into this as our whole world is being hijacked by these mad scientists, and the average trendy doesn't care and wants to eat chemicals that won't just change their sexuality and bare minimum make them metrosexual, but they want the cancer, I guess. They want to be sterile. Because I hear them. I see their comments. They go, good, I don't want to have kids. I'm glad they're sterilizing me. Humanity sucks anyways. I mean, it's this give-up attitude that is just insane.
Right. Well, even in 2011, Harvard School of Health published a study in the Journal of Pediatrics and found that pregnant mothers' exposure to BPA and other endocrine disrupting chemicals correlated with hyperactivity anxiety, aggression, depression, ADD, and ADHD for the child. So again, you have to look at all these conditions as being caused by some form of chemical coming into the body that's disrupting your normal brain activity.
Sure. Well, I used to be against folks hearing people that did testosterone replacement, but the more I research it and everything, and doctors are in the news admitting that men's testosterone by the time they're 40 is half on average what it used to be. There is a war on the literal male chemical.
The scary part about it is, there's a good news to it because there's a lot of things we can do to avoid these things and clean our body to prevent this thing from happening. But the scary thing is the done by design, this really will affect you for 4 generations. This changes your genetic code. It literally changes the way your DNA is and can affect you. And the studies have been done on mice at University of Virginia School of Medicine, actually, that showed that 4 generations later, these mice were still affected. So we're starting to get into these generational cycles, and it's sad to think that, the next 4 generations can be affected by all these chemicals. And it's not like we're slowing down and eliminating the chemicals. It's getting worse, and there's more glyphosate and more of these chemicals being sprayed and put in all of our food supply, the water, and everything else.
And so, Dr. Group, I know you want to get into Fukushima separately. And the news article right here, leaked Fukushima containers could lead to hydrogen explosions, RT. There's 333 of the containers. Each one could be as big as one of the other meltdowns. But I don't really take this just because of background radiation increasing or isotopes or whatever. I take it because I understand my glands will get filled with bad halogens, become toxic and fail, like the thyroid, and they don't fill it with good halogen. And when I forget, and that's iodine, to take my iodine every day, I feel it. It gives me a bigger boost than a cup of coffee. And I always remember hearing this from the hippies. Like I said, 20-something years ago, I'd go to Barton Springs and see hippies, and I'd say, what's that in that jug or that bottle? And they'd say, it's iodine. They'd be just, super good shape, some like 70-year-old guy looking like he was 40. And I'd be like, and then they'd go, yeah, hippie, whatever. But I remember, this is something the hippies have always known. What is it about iodine? What does it do? And I sure hope we can continue to get these deep earth crystal sources, Dr. Group.
Well, yeah, anytime you drill from deep down in the earth, you might have a time where, just like oil drilling, where it might dry up a little bit and you need to find some more. But another thing that I think is going on, and this is proven by what just happened a few days ago at Fukushima, when they're saying that Fukushima is leaking again now, and it's the worst ever, the readings in the port in Fukushima. I think that countries are now secretly trying to stock up on a lot of iodine. It's, iodine contamination, iodine 131 is being found now in the rain and milk supplies and the food supplies. But like you said, it's not only the radioactive iodine. And another thing actually that happens is, as that iodine is leaking into the Atlantic Ocean, it also mixes with salt water. And when you mix iodine with salt, it creates iodides, and it can even produce nanoparticles of weird substances that can even be gassed off and go up into the atmosphere for a while. But my research with iodine is that everybody pretty much needs it. We're all deficient in iodine because there's really not any sources of iodine left. And guess what? We've been talking about estrogen dominance and endocrine disrupting chemicals. Well, estrogen actually inhibits the absorption of iodine. So you might actually link that and say, is there a conspiracy behind the endocrine disrupting chemicals, knowing that you're not going to be able to get iodine, the absorption of iodine, if you have those chemicals in, which would mean soy or anything else. Now, the government sets an RDA of 150 micrograms a day, but they set that because that was the amount that would prevent a goiter. But they know that everybody needs much more iodine in their system, even up to, what I take, sometimes even up to 20 milligrams a day, which is 20,000 micrograms. I agree with you. Everybody needs to consult with their healthcare practitioner. But if you look around, we're seeing a massive increase in breast cancer, fibrocystic breast disease. We're talking about any type of glandular, prostate gland, All these things are affected by iodine, being iodine deficient. The thyroid needs about 6,000 micrograms, 3,000 to 6,000 micrograms every single day just for normal functioning. So if you're not sweating, you might be deficient in iodine. If you have cold hands and feet, if your skin is dry, you have insomnia, hair loss, mental illness, again linked to iodine deficiency, depression, anxiety, low immune system, weight gain. Pregnancy and miscarriages are being linked to iodine deficiency. Fibromyalgia is a deficiency. Iodine is a powerful antimicrobial. Studies have been done on iodine, which was suspended in a solution, and it inactivated viruses at dilutions of like 1 in 1 million. So iodine is just something that I feel every person, they've done studies on pregnant mothers and found out that they're deficient in iodine, something that I use, my kids take, and something that I feel is necessary because it's not just us saying that everybody's iodine deficient. The World Health Organization's Department of Nutrition and Health and Development came out and said that iodine deficiency is a public health problem in 54 countries. Elemental iodine is what the iodine is in its natural state, and that's what it is deep in the earth. And that consists of 2 iodine atoms that are bonded together, and that is a highly corrosive and toxic compound because it's part of the halogens, which is fluoride and bromine and chlorine and iodine.
And I don't want to confuse people. Explain to them, we're saying iodine's a good halogen. The problem is when it binds with radiation, then it's a bad one. That's why you need the good one so that there's no room for the bad one to come in.
Well, the iodine in its raw state can be very corrosive, and that's even though we're taking the best raw state, it still has to go through a 7-step process to be detoxified.
Explain that to people because I was listening to the hippies finally before I even knew you, and I started taking iodine here and there, but it would give me a stomach ache, you name it. The stuff they sell at the store will basically kill you. They admit that. So how is this so different, and how is it palatable?
Okay, so when iodine comes out of the ground, it's iodine. There's 2 iodine molecules in its natural state. So it's just 2 iodine atoms bonded together. So what they did a long time ago was they found that they could stabilize it, and you show the pictures of when it's smoking because iodine will evaporate or it'll outgas into the air when it comes in contact with oxygen. So what they figured a way to do was to make an iodide, and that's what you see all the military and the country stocking up on is potassium iodide, and what that is the ion state of iodine. And that's produced by bonding the iodine to another element. In this case, it would be potassium. This form of iodine, it can be ingested and it can be applied to the skin, but it's hard to break down in the body. So what we did is developed a proprietary technology to where we take the iodine crystals out of the ground, and those have to go through a process to become 99.99% pure. Once we get the 99.99% pure iodine crystals, we create a nascent or an atomic-based iodine that contains a single iodine atom. So instead of something being bonded and there's 2 and that has to be broken in the body, the nascent, the survival shield X2, has a iodine atom, which is an active atom, and it's easy for your body to absorb. And
that's why the stuff that you
away.
developed using the Russian technology in your own research turns electric blue, the true color of real iodine, not red like all the others, is because I guess they're bound. Yours is in the single form.
Right. Ours is reactive right away. It's an atomic form. It's a single bonded iodine. It's exactly what the body needs to utilize.
So we shouldn't call this nascent iodine. We should call it atomic iodine.
Well, it's pretty much the same thing. So you could, some people say nascent, some people say atomic. It just means as an active electron on its outer shell.
Okay, why, when I first started taking iodine, did it make all this stuff come out of my pores?
Well, iodine will fight for the receptor sites in the thyroid gland and everywhere else in the body, and the fat cells, especially where toxins are kept. And iodine's been proven to immobilize chemicals and toxins and heavy metals from the tissues, and then they go back into your system so you can eliminate them properly.
So that's why, on average, 2 to 3 weeks after taking it, you'll feel like crap, and then stuff will start coming out of you. You're detoxing.
It just depends on each individual, but depends on how much, fluoride they have in their body, the chlorine, bromine, other chemicals, heavy metals, lead, actually, mercury. It'll start pushing that stuff out and then getting into the tissue where you need it the most.
Because, I got energy right away, and I had energy while I felt bad. It just kind of felt like a hangover for a week. And then after that, it was like when you've been carrying, say, your 7-year-old on your shoulders up a hill and you take them off and it feels like you're flying, walking feels so easy. That's what it felt like. I was 18 again after I went through that detox. It was just amazing.
Well, because it's balancing your hormones out too, because it displaces some of those endocrine disrupting chemicals. And iodine is just an amazing substance. Once your thyroid gland starts to reactivate again and starts to become, and your pineal gland starts to decalcify, and your hormones start functioning. Usually when you have hormone disruption, that's when all your symptoms start to happen. Your low energy, your fatigue, your mental conditions, your weight gain around your stomach and your buttocks area, your insomnia, your skin issues. If you have any dry skin, psoriasis, eczema, cysts in your body, depression, anxiety, miscarriages in women. All those things are going to be, there's a whole slew of symptoms that we can link to.
And if folks don't
deficiency.
want to get Survival Shield X2 or Original Survival Shield, they can go do research and find good salts that do have good iodine in them, correct?
Well, you can get a Himalayan crystal salt, and that's going to have some good iodine in it. But again, it's probably going to be bonded to a sodium or a potassium. There's no form of iodine like the X2 out there, and it's easy to take. You're probably, even in the salts, not going to get enough.
But still, it's better than nothing. It's better than nothing.
It's better than nothing. It's better than nothing. But you got to remember, think of all the chemicals that you're bringing into your body. How many people out there have mercury amalgam fillings? They're constantly getting mercury gas leaking into their brain and their bloodstream. All the chemicals.
Sure, let me ask you this to go to break and then come back and take calls. Because we got Dave as a vet has a question about his meds. Robert wants to talk about mercury and dental fillings you just mentioned. I'm going to push our next guest back. I want to interview him, but till about 15 after. I'll do the whole rest of the hour with our next guest on media. Very important interview coming up. But we're 1 minute from break here. I just wanted to get into the fact that you don't want to openly say this on air, but you were talking to some researchers and folks who were trying to test this. But the way you use organic palm glycerin, just as a different medium than alcohol, what's happening with the iodine going into that? You think that might be making it even more bioavailable, or what's happening?
Well, with our research, we were looking for a natural, non-toxic source to be able to stabilize the iodine in that state. All the research before has been done with alcohol, but we now know that alcohol in itself is an endocrine disrupting chemical. So if alcohol is an endocrine disrupting chemical and iodine is supposed to take the endocrine disrupting chemicals out of the body, then it's kind of, it's kind of one of those, buffering situations.
I wanted to get Dr. Group on about this article that people also liked when he was on 2 weeks ago. And we had the Ask Dr. Group a question on supplements, on cleaning up your body, on detoxing, something that he harps on a lot. It's out of the Daily Mail today. Exposure to common household pesticides triples boys' risk of ADHD. Really, you mean bug poison might not be good for you? Experts warn. A pesticide found in common household products has been found to triple boys' risk of being diagnosed with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Yeah, roaches run around at first when you spray them with poison too. Scientists have warned symptoms of the condition, notably hyperactivity and impulsive activity, have found to be associated with exposure to pyrethroid pesticides, which is one of the most common ones that comes from a flower. Dr. Group, what should we hit first? I mean, I know you've got an agenda of stuff you want to cover and take calls at the bottom of the hour, but every time you come in, you harp on what's under the kitchen cabinet or what these flower extracts are doing. What is your overall view on this situation?
Well, I've been saying for a long time, addressing the root cause of disease is one thing. And really, when you look at the pharmaceutical companies, there's two branches. One branch is disease management, and the other branch is mental illness creation and management. And all of them, whether it's ADD, ADHD, depression, anxiety, bipolar, schizophrenia, all of that's caused by too many chemicals coming in and not enough coming out.
And folks knew that. They used to say Mad as a Hatter for folks that worked around mercury.
Right, right. So again, it's the medical profession and the pharmaceutical companies creating illnesses and creating conditions, and they're saying it's a chemical imbalance in the brain, but it's really...
That might be easier than you think, actually. Then you're going to get locked up in a Supermax prison. But continuing here, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we're talking about. And you add thousands of chemicals and the stuff that's in the clothes and everything, that's why we got a whacked out society. The elite are whacked out because they're inbred, decadent, out of their minds. History shows that happens over and over again. So Dr. Group, InfoWarsLife.com's main advisor and quality control officer, Army Special Ops veteran. He's got a whole bunch of nutritionist degrees, alternative medicine degrees, a chiropractor as well. I won't go over his amazing background, but he's really a smart guy. We have medical doctors that advise us as well, and my dad's a chemist and other things. He advises InfoWarsLife.com. But he's pioneered a lot of the research that's cutting edge out there today. And of course, it's mirrored by a lot of the research of Dr. Blaylock, who's, of course, a retired brain surgeon. But here we are going over all this today in South Africa that they claim is pretty safe. Chrysanthemum, yeah. Look, I'm not stupid, but my dad would tell me when I was, 10, 11, 12 years old or even younger, take the dogs out and give them a bath. They got fleas. And I remember I'd wash them with pyrethrin soap. And I remember getting higher than a kite. But my dad was a smart guy, but he kind of went with the system that pyrethrins are safe for humans. No, I should have been wearing gloves. And I'd get it all over me, and I'd be back there, on the porch or the front yard, out there with the water hose, washing the dogs, scrubbing them, everything. That was one of my chores, mowing the lawn, carrying out the trash, helping him clean out the gutters. Now kids just watch television and dream of being on the Red Guards, but I can't wait for Red Terror to be carried out on Jones. Yeah, man. Can't wait to kill him.
Chemical toxicity in the brain. That's why 3,000 people a month die from psychiatric medications. And that's why our children are being medicated now, because it's an easy way to put people on medications for the rest of their life. They're even trying to diagnose children in the womb with bipolar disease right now. They want every single person from the age of 1 on some medication for life. There's 4-year-olds that have attempted suicide. There's 5-year-olds that have actually committed suicide because of the antipsychotics.
But that's okay, because the federal initiative that's 10 years old is called the New Freedom Initiative, which admits its goal is to basically drug everybody. Its interim goal is by 2015, I guess that's this year, to have half the kids in the country on a psychiatric drug. They haven't reached that yet, but they're working towards it.
Right, and if you leave a psychiatrist's office without a prescription, there's even a mental disorder for that, where they can put on your record that you left without a prescription and